If you ever want to know what it feels like to have your soul slowly sautéed in a pan of cheap asphalt, try living in a trailer in Azusa during a July heat wave. It was 104 degrees in the shade, and we didn't even have shade. The air in the trailer was so thick you didn't breathe it, you chewed it. But the heat wasn't the problem. The problem was Lucky. Lucky hadn't had a cigarette in 3 hours, and she was currently trying to smoke a piece of dried basil she had found behind the stove. "It's organic, right?" she wheezed, her eyes darting around like a caffeinated squirrel. "Basil is a leaf. Tobacco is a leaf. It's basically a salad." "Hey, I'm smoking a caprese salad." "Lucky, put the spice rack down," I groaned, peeling my thighs off the vinyl dinette with a sound like a giant piece of Velcro. "You look like a Victorian ghost having a breakdown." "I am a ghost. I'm haunting this double wide until I get a Marlboro," she shrieked. Alan and Rob, our better halves, and I use that term loosely, were off doing day labor, probably digging a hole just to stand in the shade of it. They had the truck. The bike had a flat tire. And most importantly, they had the keys to everything that moved, except for the gray goat. The gray goat was Alan's old Nash Rambler. It was the color of a rainy Tuesday and had the turning radius of a cruise ship. Alan loved that car more than he loved his own mother. He had a no food without permission rule for the interior. "Alan will skin us," I said, staring out the window at the goat sitting under the carport shimmering in the heat. "He'll turn our hides into seat covers." "Alan is 5 miles away hauling drywall," Lucky countered, suddenly standing very still. She reached into a ceramic cat on the counter and pulled out a single, glinting silver key. "I've had the spare for 6 months. It's a sign. The goat wants to go to the 7-Eleven. It told me so in a dream." "That wasn't a dream. That was a heat stroke." 5 minutes later, we were in the goat. The interior smelled like a mix of Armor All and pit sweat. Lucky cranked the engine. It didn't so much start as it awakened with a cough that sounded like a heavy smoker in a library. "To the corner store!" Lucky shouted, shifting into reverse and nearly taking out Mrs. Gable's pink flamingo lawn ornaments. We were feeling like outlaws. The wind, well, hot air dryer air, was in our hair. Lucky was steering with one hand and practicing her "I'm innocent" face in the rearview mirror. We hit the 7-Eleven. She bought 3 packs of Reds, and for a glorious 30 seconds, the world was right. Then we hit a pothole that could have swallowed a toddler. Ka-chunk! Flap, 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 flap. "Tell me that's a flat earther protest outside," Lucky whispered, the car pulling violently to the right. "It's a flat something," I said. We hopped out. The front passenger tire looked like a shredded head of lettuce. The rim was kissing the pavement. We were 2 miles from home in a stolen car with 0 mechanical skills, and the sun was currently trying to melt our retinas. "Okay," Lucky said, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "Don't panic. We have a jack. I think it's in the trunk under Alan's collection of vintage Hustler magazines." We opened the trunk. The jack was there, but it looked like something used to build the pyramids. We spent 10 minutes trying to figure out where it touched the car without the goat collapsing like a house of cards. Just as we were about to give up, and I was thinking about starting a new life as a desert hermit, a black Chevy truck pulled over. 2 guys got out who looked like they had been professionally weathered by the elements. One was a tall drink of water in a tank top, Stretch, and the other was built like a cinder block, Tank. "You ladies look like you're trying to perform surgery on a rock," Stretch laughed. "The goat has a limp," Lucky said, batting her eyelashes, which were currently melting off her face. "And we are just 2 delicate flowers who don't know how to use a whatever this metal thing is." Tank looked at the jack, then at us. He did not look impressed. He looked like a man who wanted to be in a swimming pool, not changing a tire for two strangers in a primer gray beater. Lucky saw the hesitation. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a fat, perfectly rolled joint. It was her emergency in case of apocalypse stash. Help us swap the tire, and this, along with a cold Gatorade, is yours, she promised. The speed at which those men moved was supernatural. Tank had the car in the air before Lucky could even find the Gatorade. Stretch swapped the tire with the efficiency of a NASCAR pit crew. Within 8 minutes, the donut spare was on. Don't go over 40 on that, Stretch warned, taking the payment with a wink. And maybe tell your boyfriend to buy some new rubber. This tire is older than my grandma. Home? I asked as we pulled away. No, Lucky said with a wild glint in her eye. We're already in trouble. If we go home, we just wait to get caught. Let's go to the wash. Everyone's hanging out by the spillway. We can try and get a real tire there, or at least some better music. To get to the wash, we had to drive past the villas at Oak Creek, a half-finished housing development where Rob and Alan were currently working. Lucky, slow down. We're approaching the site, I warned, ducking so low my chin was on the dashboard. I am slowing down. I'm being a ninja, she yelled while driving a car that sounded like a lawnmower in a trash can. As we rounded the corner, there they were. Rob and Alan were standing by a stack of lumber covered in white drywall dust, looking like two very grumpy powdered donuts. Rob was holding a thermos and looking directly at the road. He's looking, I hissed. I'm a ghost! He can't see ghosts, Lucky shouted, and for some reason her brilliant plan was to floor it. The gray goat roared. The tiny donut tire screamed in agony as it struggled to grip the pavement. We flew past them in a blur of primer gray and blue cigarette smoke. In the side mirror, I saw Rob drop his thermos. He didn't move. He just stood there watching the goat speed away toward the desert, probably wondering if he was having a heat-induced hallucination. Did he see us? Lucky panted, her heart visibly beating through her tank top. He saw a car being kidnapped by two lunatics, I said. Keep driving! To the wash! We hit the wash and hid the car behind a clump of scrub brush. The kids were there, jumping bikes and blasting AC/DC from a boombox. Lucky hopped out, lit her 14th cigarette of the hour, and leaned against the lopsided car like she'd intended for this to happen all along. See, she said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. Adventure, excitement. And I have nicotine. Who cares if Alan kills us tonight? Today, we were legends. I looked at the shredded tire in the trunk, the dusty goat, and the impending sunset that meant our boyfriends would be home in an hour. Lucky? Yeah, you're paying for the funeral. The sun was finally beginning to dip behind the jagged silhouette of the San Bernardino Mountains, turning the sky into a bruised palette of deep purple and neon orange. At the wash, the party was just hitting its stride, but for Lucky and me, the vibe was shifting from outlaw legends to impending doom. The gray goat sat tucked behind a massive graffiti-covered concrete pylon, looking pathetic with its tiny donut spare tire. Lucky was leaning against the fender, holding a lukewarm beer someone had handed her, looking far more relaxed than a woman whose boyfriend was about to commit a felony. We have to go back, Lucky, I said, checking my Casio for the 20th time. They finish work at 6. It's 5:45. By the time they get dropped off, we need that car under the carport or we are officially dead. Lucky took a long drag of her cigarette, squinting into the twilight. Technically, the goat is still here. We haven't lost it. We've just borrowed its youth. The tire, Lucky! The tire is shredded in the trunk. Alan knows every lug nut on this car by name. He's going to notice the gray goat is suddenly tiptoeing on a spare. She sighed, flicking her ember into the dirt. Fine, but we're going in hot. If we're lucky, they'll be so tired from hauling drywall they won't even look at the wheels until morning. We'll just tell them a stray dog popped it while it was parked. A dog? A dog popped a steel-belted radial. It could happen. Those pit bulls over on 5th Street, they have powerful jaws. We piled back into the goat. The drive back was the longest 10 minutes of my life. Every time Lucky hit a bump, the donut tire let out a pathetic squeak, reminding us of our crimes. We skirted the construction site, praying the white contractor truck was gone. It was. The lot was empty. Okay, they're on their way home, I whispered, gripping the plastic handle on the door so hard my knuckles were white. We pulled into the trailer park, the engine of the goat echoing off the metal siding of the neighboring units like a gunshot. Lucky swung it under the carport with surprising precision, killed the lights, and we sat there in the sudden ringing silence. Once we were back inside the trailer, I hissed at Lucky, "Hide the keys!" She shoved the spare key back into the ceramic cat on the counter just as a dusty, beat-up work truck pulled into the gravel lot in front of our lot. It was the contractor. He was dropping them off. Rob and Alan hopped out of the back looking like they'd been dragged through a flour mill and then baked in a kiln. They were covered in white dust, their faces streaked with sweat, and they moved with the heavy, rhythmic gait of men who spent 10 hours breaking their backs for minimum wage. "Act natural," Lucky whispered, grabbing a fashion magazine and opening it, upside down, of course. The screen door creaked open. Rob stumbled in first, groaning as he kicked off his steel-toed boots. "I can't feel my toes. I think my soul stayed at the job site." Alan followed, silent as always, his eyes squinting against the dim yellow light of the trailer. He headed straight for the sink to splash water on his face. "Hey, girls," Rob muttered, collapsing onto the sofa next to me. He smelled like sawdust and Gatorade. "You guys have a quiet day?" "Oh, you know," Lucky said, her voice an octave higher than usual. "Just sat here, thinking about the environment, reading, being bored, very, very bored." I nodded vigorously. "So bored. We practically didn't move. I think I grew moss." Alan finished drying his face with a paper towel. He looked out the window toward the carport. He didn't say anything, he just stood there, staring. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought he could hear it. "Did you guys move the goat?" Alan asked. His voice was low, vibrating with a suspicion that only a car-obsessed man can possess. "The goat?" Lucky laughed, a shrill, terrifying sound. "Why would we move the goat? We don't even have the keys, Alan. Remember? You're the gatekeeper." Alan walked to the door. He didn't put his boots back on, he just walked out in his socks. "He knows," I whispered to Lucky. "He's a bloodhound for ramblers." We followed him out like two kids heading to the principal's office. Alan was standing by the passenger side, staring down at the donut tire. He looked like he was viewing a crime scene. "Where is my tire?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Oh, that!" Lucky said, stepping forward with a look of mock surprise. "Alan, you won't believe it. A group of teenagers, hoodlums. They came through the park with a sharpened screwdriver. We tried to stop them, we really did, but they were so fast." Alan looked at her, then back at the tire. Then he reached down and touched the rim. "This rim is hot," he said, "and there's fresh desert scrub stuck in the wheel well. And is that the smell of blueberry Gatorade?" Rob had joined us by now, leaning against the trailer wall, a slow smirk spreading across his dusty face. He looked at the shredded tire now sitting beside the trunk, then at me. "You guys went out to the wash, didn't you?" Rob asked. "We ran out of cigarettes," Lucky burst out, the dam finally breaking. "It was an emergency. I was gonna die, and then the car died, and then these guys named Stretch and Tank fixed it for a joint, and then we almost hit you at the construction site, but we didn't, and then we went to the wash to find a replacement, but everyone was just listening to AC/DC. The silence that followed was heavy. Alan looked at the goat, then at Lucky, then back at the goat. I prepared for the explosion. I prepared for the "you're banned from the vehicle" speech. Instead, Alan let out a long, wheezing breath. He sat down on the gravel next to his lopsided car and started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was the laugh of a man who had been defeated by the universe. "You gave a joint to a guy named Tank?" Alan asked, wiping his eyes. "It was a really good joint, Alan," Lucky said defensively. "Of course it was," he sighed. He looked up at Rob. "Hey, Rob, remember how I said nothing could make this day worse than hauling that drywall up 3 flights of stairs?" "I remember," Rob grinned. "I was wrong. My girlfriend stole my car, shredded my tire, and paid a stranger in drugs to put a donut on it." An hour later, the tension had evaporated into the cooling evening air. Alan was still grumpy, but he was currently eating a sandwich Lucky had made him, extra mayo, his favorite, while Rob poked fun at our heist. "So, you floored it past us?" Rob asked, shaking his head. "I told Alan, 'Hey, that looks like your car.' And he said, 'Nah, my car's safe at home. Who would steal the goat?'" "We're legends," Lucky insisted, perched on the counter. "We survived a blowout in 100-degree heat and a near miss with the law. By which I mean you two." "You're lucky I don't charge you for the tire," Alan muttered, though he was already looking through the penny saver for a new set of rims. "I'll make it up to you," Lucky said, hopping down and handing him a fresh pack of Marlboros she had managed to save from the ordeal. "See, I even got you a present." Alan took the cigarettes, a small, reluctant smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Next time, just walk. Or call me. I'll quit the job. It's less stress than wondering if my car is being used as a getaway vehicle for a nicotine run." As we sat there in the dim light of the trailer, the oscillating fan finally pushing some cool evening air around, I realized that despite the heat, the flat tire, and the near-death experience at the construction site, it was one of the best days we'd had all summer. "Hey, Lucky," I whispered as the boys started arguing over what to watch on the grainy TV. "Yeah? Do you still have that other joint?" Lucky grinned, her eyes sparkling in the dark. "In the ceramic cat. Why, you want to go for another drive?" "Not a chance," I laughed. "Let's just sit right here." If you've ever taken a car you weren't supposed to, or if you've been stranded in the desert, tell me your story in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more runaway chaos.